The baby kangaroos and baby raccoons are marbly. Here's the best way I can put it. Go poke a pillow right now. That's feathery soft, right? Now imagine poking a slab of marble. That's gonna feel completely different. It's quite literally rock solid. Let's say the pillow has a hardness of 1 and the marble has a hardness of 10. When bottoming out on most switches, I put that hardness at around a 6. But typing on the baby kangaroos and raccoons produces a really hard, solid typing experience. Definitely more so than the typical switch. It really does feel pretty close to chiseling commands on a stone. So let me show you guys the two switches. They're both made by Gateron and they're both named after animals. The green ones are baby kangaroos. These ones are tactile, so you'll feel a bump when typing on them. And the brown ones are baby raccoons. These ones are linear, so when you type on them, you won't feel a bump. Instead, they'll feel really smooth. The housings on both switches are transparent, so they're really RGB friendly if you're into that. And these two switches, one being tactile and one being linear, are clearly different, but they have enough similarities such that we can discuss them together. I'd say they share the same DNA, it's just that they're different variants. We'll start with the similarities and discuss their differences near the end. When you type on these switches and you press all the way down or bottom out, it feels very firm and unyielding. Especially in these tactile baby kangaroos, bottoming out feels like really solid. Like marbly. The two switches also feel very rigid. Both the kangaroos and raccoons have lengthened springs. Because of this, it requires more force to press down. Especially with the kangaroos, we have a lengthened, dual-staged spring, so there's even more of a substantial, snappier feeling throughout the press. The raccoon's springs aren't dual-staged, so there's less weightiness when compared to its tactile twin. It's definitely still on the heavier side though. The two switches are very smooth as well, so they don't feel scratchy at all. Both are lightly factory lubed, and Gateron's done a great job with them. They feel consistently really polished. These baby kangaroos and raccoons aren't just marbly in terms of feel, it carries over to the sound as well. So let's go back to tapping on a marble slab. It would make a hard, sharp sound, right? Both the baby kangaroos and baby raccoons have this sharp, resonant sound profile. The two switches are also definitely on the louder side. They have this really satisfying, clacky sound profile. In part, this is due to their long pole stems. Here, you can see that the stems of the baby kangaroos and baby raccoons are longer than that of the typical switch. And these long poles tend to have a more pronounced bottom-out sound when compared to their shorter counterparts. I also think it would help to compare these switches with some of Gateron's other offerings. For one, I'll be comparing them with Gateron's Oil Kings, which have a more creamy and thocky sound profile. I'll also throw in Gateron's North Pole switches. These switches have a gummier sound profile. Finally, I'll throw in Gateron's Silent Ink Blacks, which have a muted sound profile. So here's a sound test to point you into the right direction. Of course, a good question to ask is, will you actually like a so-called marbly switch, or for that matter, a clacky or a thocky switch? After all, typing is a really tactile experience. You really have to feel a switch to know whether or not you like it. So if you're unsure if you'd actually like these baby kangaroos or baby raccoons, I'd recommend Milktooth's Try at Home program for keyboard switches. You get to try 5 switches at home for 5 days, and during your try at home period, you can discover which switch is actually the best match for you. You get to sample these switches on the switch testers that we used in the sound tests as part of your try at home. So if you'd like to try these baby kangaroos alongside the baby raccoons, plus 3 other switches, click the link below to get started. As the baby kangaroos and baby raccoons are 2 different switch types, we do need to discuss them separately. So the kangaroos are the tactile switches. In terms of its tactility, they feel really snappy. They don't have the strongest tactility, but they still feel pretty sharp. I'd say there's a medium to strong bump when you type on them. On the other hand, the raccoons are the linear switches here. The best way I can describe typing on these specific linear switches is thinking of the difference between pouring a glass of water and pouring a glass of honey. And I'd say the baby raccoons are going to feel closer to pouring a jar of honey. In other words, expect a heftier type of smoothness when you're typing on these baby raccoons. There's definitely more resistance when typing on them compared to the standard linear switch. So who are these switches for? For one, I'd say you have to prefer a stiffer, which is to say medium to medium heavy typing experience. For two, I'd say you'd have to enjoy a more resonant, clacky sound profile. Lastly, you have to enjoy rigidity and firmness in your typing experience. So if you're looking for things that make up a Marbly typing experience, I definitely go for the baby kangaroos and baby raccoons for a tactile and linear typing experience, respectively. And now, here are the sound tests.